Have you ever been trying to make a hit from a field position and you just can't get steady? Well, here at Evil Genius Armory, we're going to try and give you some tips and tricks today on how to take those unsteady field positions and steady them up. Because an unsteady position is where hits turn into misses. You can just steady them up. We can turn those misses back into hits. Today, we're going to be doing two things. The first thing that we're going to be doing is trying to help you get steady in awkward field positions. A lot of times we find ourselves, when we're away from the bench, when we're out in the world, we find ourselves in positions where it's just difficult to get steady. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I've picked over many decades of competition and lots and lots of classes. And I'm going to try and help you become better at coping with those awkward field positions just using the stuff that you can bring with you. The second thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to be testing this rifle. I've been working with this rifle and I've tested it for accuracy. I've selected an appropriate ammunition. I've tested that for standard deviation, velocity, accuracy potential, and I've mounted an appropriate optic on it. I put a Nightforce NX8 1:8 optic on this, and I'm kind of casting this in an SPR roll. So I'm personally testing this rifle from a bunch of different field positions to make sure that it performs to my standard and to kind of test it and try and diagnose any weaknesses. So we're going to go on that journey together. A couple things that we've done with this, I did put in a little better trigger, and you'll notice that I've attached a dope card on the side. I plugged my velocity and my ammo and all the pertinent data into a ballistics calculator, and I like to use just a little bit of gaffer's tape to go ahead and write that data on my rifle because I forget stuff all the time. And this way, I always have it with me. So when I get into position, I can get my ranges and I can reference my data immediately. I don't have to look for a data book. I don't have to look for a log book. I can just know that if I'm shooting at 400 yards, I need 8 MOA. So we're going to run this rifle from various field positions and we're going to see how it does. Let's say you have a couple targets that you're wanting to make hits on, but the targets are just a little bit too low for your system to work off the ground. So you're going to have to find a little more elevation to make those hits. That's our situation here today. The set of targets that I'm going to try and make hits on, I can't see from the ground. Now out here on my range, we have a ConX box. We're going to use that to build some elevation. When we get to the box, we're going to have to get our gear up on the box. We're going to have to range the targets, reference our dope, come up with a firing solution, build a platform stable enough that we can make our hits, make 2 hits close, 2 hits far, gather our stuff, and then break position. So I think this will be a good first position for us to start beginning to test this rifle on and get a few tips and tricks. What do you think, Maggie? Is that going to work? Maggie brought a stick. Thanks, baby. Come here. Sit for the people. Come here. Come here. Maggie. Never work with kids or dogs. Can you see? All right, I have targets at 247 and 488. Going to 247 first. .247. Firing. to second target. Firing. And I do. All right, so let's talk about that ConX position a little bit. First thing we need to realize is the ConX box is a hard surface, and your rifle is a hard surface. And if you're going to shoot off of a hard surface, you need to have something soft between the hard surface and your rifle. And I do not advocate shooting off of a bipod unless you don't have another option. So I always try to shoot off of a backpack. I'm carrying stuff anyway. So the backpack is a convenient way to get very stable. It allows you to pivot, it allows you to move up and down. They're very flexible and they're very stable. The second thing, first thing in my backpack, you'll see in the video, I pull out a rear bag. A rear bag is indispensable when you're shooting from any awkward position. If you can use a rear bag, man, go for it. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. This is from Tab. This was a little bit pricey, and I love this bag, but you can use a sock full of rice if you want to. It's not a big deal, but it allows you to have the butt of your rifle nestled in that bag, and then with your support hand, you can squeeze the bag to lower the muzzle, and you can release the bag to raise the muzzle. And it allows you to adjust your position with a fair degree of precision and make good shots. And the last thing that I want to discuss, when you're getting ready to shoot more than one target, make sure that you pan from the intended target to the second target and make sure that you can make a clean transition. A lot of times you end up having to almost reset your position when going from one target to another. So it's good to make sure that you're going to be able to make a clean transition if you're trying to be quick about it. One more thing, man, don't forget that range card on the buttstock. Gaffer's tape is cheap, it doesn't leave any residue on your rifle. If I'm going to shoot something at 480 yards, I can look right here and go, well, 450 is 10 MOA and 500 is 12, I'll hold 11. And that'll pretty much get it done. It's not as fine as maybe a PRS shooter would need, but for field work, man, it's an excellent addition that you don't have to spend money on, really. It's pretty cheap. So those are a few tips and tricks from the ConX position. Let's go ahead and see about that next position. So for our next scenario, let's say that we're driving along in our Polaris Ranger and we spot a couple targets that need to be shot. Now again, there's too much brush, too much ground clutter for the shot to be taken off of the ground. So we're going to have more elevation again. We're going to use the roof of the Polaris Ranger to build enough elevation to get a good sight line on those targets. The Ranger is wobbly and the roof is slick. We're going to set up and see how this goes. Range is 177. .415. .177. Firing. 419. All right, so we took a few shots from the top of my Polaris Ranger, which isn't ideal, but it's useful. I've got a lot of brush in that field and I can't see the targets from where I was parked. I pulled up on a little rise. If you'll notice in that video, a couple tips and tricks for you. I try to put as much of my body against the Ranger as possible. So from my waist up, I'm almost laying on the Ranger. And again, I use my bag and I use that rear bag, right? I put my feet in such a way that I'm putting pressure against the roof to help control recoil and help steady me up. And those things apply just as much on there as they did on the ConX. is just a slightly different position where we're essentially standing and leaning over a support. So those are some things that might help you. For our last scenario, we're going to be taking a couple shots from inside my Tundra. These are going to be the longest shots that we have, and these are going to be the most unstable positions that I use. The only thing I'm going to have to use for positioning will be my mirror, my A-pillar, and my door frame. So when we do this, this is going to be challenging. I'm going to have to take one shot left-handed, one shot right-handed. Everything else still applies. So let's get a look at this and see how it goes. First target is at 313. Second target is at 533. Gonna have to shoot 313 left-handed. .313. .533. That'll do. It's good proof of concept. All right, so shooting out of the truck, that's challenging, but it's very real world. The reality is, in our modern civilized society, if we had to go do something in a zombie apocalypse style situation, likely we're driving. And if we need to make a fast exit, well, likely we're going to be driving away as well. So in that particular situation, all I really had to work with was my mirror and the door frame. So I threw a bag, and I didn't use the bag that I was showing you earlier. I used a different bag, but I throw a bag there to create that hard, soft, hard layer. And then I try to brace myself up against the door frame as much as possible so that I utilize the stability of the truck and not my own musculoskeletal structure. And because I had to check, you know, we talked earlier about checking that you can move from one target to another. Because of the angle, I had to shoot the closer target left-handed, which isn't that big of a deal. But if you notice, my hearing protection was fighting me. So in that particular instance, I'd have been far better served to have plugs. But I was shooting a video, so I just rolled with it and kind of fought through the inconvenience. But my hearing protection was banging on the top of the window, the top of the door frame. But in that position, I was less stable. It was my farthest shots, and I made a couple misses. That's okay. We're training. That's how we get better. We get out there in the world and we train some. So when I shot the close target, I missed off the right edge. Made a slight correction and made my 2 hits. And then when I swung over to my far target and was able to switch back to right-handed, I was trying to brace against the door frame and steady everything up, but I wasn't able to use a rear bag, so it's a little bit less stable. And I made a miss at the, I believe it was 533, something like that. And then I had to make a slight correction and make my next 2 hits. So those are practical field positions that it's worthwhile to practice if you can, if you've got the facilities to do it, if you've got a place you can do it safely and responsibly. So let's have a few final thoughts. We've learned that a hard, soft, hard layering is very beneficial for shooting from field positions. A rear bag, indispensable. Me personally, testing this system, testing myself, my dope was just preliminary. I haven't trued this dope up. If you watch the video, if you go back, you'll see that most of my hits are a little low. So I'm going to need to go back and do a little bit more fine work at those ranges and true that dope up a little bit so that my impacts are right where I expect them to be. They were a little lower than I expected. And that's okay. That's why we're testing, and that's why we're training. I hope you're doing the same. So with all that said, I believe it was a beneficial day at the range. I learned a few things. I hope you learned a few things. If any of that stuff was of use to you, these videos, there's a lot of work that goes into them. A lot of hours. If any of that's useful to you, man, throw me a like, throw me a subscribe. It actually helps the channel out a lot. It lets YouTube know that people are watching the videos and they appreciate them. And I appreciate you. So thanks for coming out and training with me. Thanks for hanging out to the end. Yeah, until next time, it's Evil Genius Armory. And our rifles are hard, sir. Maggie, come on, over here. Never work with kids or dogs. Can you sit? Sit for me, baby. Say hi to the people. Okay, and then I've got footage of me getting up and off the ConX.